Hey, this is Ben Cubbage from Elevated Trips, elevatedtrips.com, and today we're going to talk about Bhaktapur Square. This is a UNESCO heritage site, about a 30-minute drive from downtown Kathmandu. If you got 1 or 2 days in Kathmandu, you got to visit Bhaktapur Square. This is probably the best example of Nepali architecture. This is the Newari people group here. This is one of the first civilizations in the Kathmandu Valley, and from the 10th century, the Newari people group created basically what is today the definitive style of Nepali architecture. They're known for their pottery and also incredible yogurt. Probably some of the best yogurt I've ever had. Super thick, creamy yogurt is made here right by in Bhaktapur. Okay, we're here at the ticket booth for Bhaktapur, the World Heritage Site. The ticket booth is a little bit smaller than you'd think. You buy tickets right here. It's about $15 US to get in. And you're gonna wanna come with a guide because the history for Bhaktapur is really gonna be worth it. Newari architecture here. Wood is very rare here in the Kathmandu Valley. We're at about 1,300 meters and there's not a lot of forests around. And so for these wooden decorations that embellish the doorways and windows, these are very expensive. So this part is actually a courtyard where a king once ruled. And you can see all the wooden decorations. Bhaktapur, one of the really cool things to do is check out this handmade paper making shop called the Peacock Shop, and they use this. It's almost like a hemp plant. It's not hemp, but the fibers inside are almost like a hemp, and they use that to they break it up into a pulp with paper to make a paper out of wood and pulp, and they create these beautiful handmade gift cards and lamps and lampshades and all sorts of really neat things. Behind me you can see a classic example of some of the wood carving here. The Peacock Shop here on the 3rd or 4th floor of the papermaking factory. The man who's an art professor in a local university here in Kathmandu, he's preserved all this wood and actually made a real living house that he lives out of. And the beams that he uses, these beams are, many of these are 700 or 800 years old, and they're actually weight bearing and they support the house. So imagine using 700-year-old handcrafted wood and building a 4-story house out of it and then living it, and that's exactly what he's done. So this is living history right here. It's not just a paper shop. Of course they do sell handmade paper on the 1st floor, but as you keep going up the house it just gets more and more amazing, and then you can come up here and get a view of the Bhaktapur area and overlook some of the temples and housing here. It's really beautiful. personally like sleeping in Tamil, but there are plenty of guest houses here in Bhaktapur as well if you want to sleep here, and there's also some nice coffee shops too. Bhaktapur, and right behind me is the tallest 5-story temple. Amazingly, in the 2005 Nepali earthquake, this temple was not destroyed at all. There's not even a crack in it. So whereas many of these buildings were 500 years old and fell down during the earthquake, this temple did not fall down and it still remains. So pretty amazing. But what's really awesome is that the temples that have been destroyed from the earthquake, Nepal did not receive any outside foreign aid to reinvest in those temples. They rebuilt them all themselves. In fact, this temple behind me is newly painted and refurnished. This is basically an incarnation of Shiva, which is considered the destructor deity of Hinduism. And this particular incarnation is considered so demonic and scary that you'll see there's actually no door on the temple behind me, because to enter into the temple and even to look at the face of this particular deity would be to invite wrath upon yourself. So there's no door in this temple. You cannot go in, but there is a statue of this particular incarnation of Shiva inside this temple. So this is a really cool place to hang out for a little while. There's a few little coffee shops around here, and I love Bhaktapur because it's like a living history museum. You have all this 500-year-old history here, and yet there's people living here. There's motorcycles, there's pigeons, there's vendors, there's a little bit of everything. So it's classic Asia. It's work and business meets religion and culture all in one place, and I love it. It's not a temple, it's not a market. It's just all of the above together. Okay, one of the things you gotta try when you're in Bhaktapur. Bhaktapur is famous for its amazing, super thick and creamy yogurt. You can see this sign behind me here, Juju Dal. You gotta go in a restaurant and get some yogurt. It's made in a handcrafted pottery glass, and the yogurt is awesome. It's served a little bit chilled, and it might be the thickest and creamiest and best yogurt you've ever had in your life. So while you're in Bhaktapur, make sure you check out a restaurant. There's a lot of coffee shops and stuff, and make sure you order some local Nepalese food. Newaris are famous for a really particular type of food of crushed rice, dried crushed rice served with various types of spiced vegetables. And make sure when you get that, you get the yogurt as well. This is Pottery Square in Bhaktapur. You can see the ladies behind us actually drying some pots, and you can see the men actually spinning the ceramics behind us. Super cool. We're here in the Bhaktapur Durbar Square. This is the King's Palace, and we're here right around 6 o'clock at night. This used to be the King's private quarters. you can see there's quite a few of these buildings have fallen down in the 2005 earthquake, but they are restoring them. This stupa behind me all stone is fully being restored, and should hopefully be restored in the next 2 to 3 years as they're rebuilding this 600-year-old stonework. So the windows in the king's palace, you can see those wooden windows with the little holes in them back there. Those were actually constructed so the king, who of course had multiple wives, could look down and could see what was going on, but people could not look up at him. So it's kind of a privacy issue. You know, back then they didn't have screen doors or whatever. So so the windows were designed with tiny little holes that you could peep through, and actually the direct Nepali translation of these windows means window with a hole you can peep through. So that was the purpose of the original wooden architecture, and you see it carried over in modern days in some of the Nepali architecture in the Bhaktapur area. Behind me is the main entrance to Bhaktapur Square, although you can enter through, there's about 3 or 4 different gates you can enter in, but many tourists will come in this way. We happen to be actually walking out this way. So that completes our tour of Bhaktapur. Check out Bhaktapur outside of Kathmandu. It's definitely worth a day, half day to full day of your time, and subscribe to our channel.